Welcome back to my channel Rim's Travel Diaries. Today we are taking you to ancient Mesopotamia to talk about one of the 7 wonders of the world. Today we will be talking about Hanging Gardens of Babylon. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. Please consider subscribing for more videos like this one. Let's begin. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were ancient gardens believed by the ancient Greeks, Romans, and others to have been located near the royal palace in Babylon. By the beginning of the 21st century, however, the site of the Hanging Gardens had not yet been conclusively established. Nevertheless, many theories persisted regarding the structure and location of the gardens. Ancient texts do not provide any details of the Hanging Gardens, and the earliest written record of them comes from a letter written in 515 BCE. By the Greek writer Antipater of Sidon to his contemporary and fellow poet Blasius of Emera. In this text, Antipater cites the Hanging Gardens among the 7 wonders of the world. According to the ancient historian Diodorus Siculus, the Hanging Gardens were built by order of King Nebuchadnezzar II after he noticed his wife Amytis, who was a Median, pining for the mountainous terrain of her homeland. Many versions of this story tell us that Amytis in particular longed for the lush cedar mountains of Armenia, far to the north, and so the king assuaged his wife's homesickness by commissioning the construction of the Hanging Gardens. According to another version, the gardens were built by Nebuchadnezzar's father, Nabopolassar, when he took the Babylonian throne in 626 BCE. And still another tradition attributes their construction to the semi-legendary Queen Samaramat, mother of the Assyrian king Adad-nirari III, who reigned from 810 to 783 BCE. Traditional accounts held that the gardens were laid out on a series of ziggurat-like towers, a type of Mesopotamian stepped pyramid that usually served as a temple or platform for a shrine. These towers, according to Pliny the Elder, were surrounded on all sides by deep and wide canals and supported by vaults below the surface of the river. This description has led to the speculation that the Hanging Gardens were rooftop gardens, rather than freestanding structures. The Hanging Gardens were described in detail by a number of classical authors. Though some sources disagreed on who built them, a number of descriptions concurred that the gardens were located near the royal palace and were set upon vaulted terraces. They were also described as having been watered by an exceptional system of irrigation and roofed with stone balconies on which were layered various materials, such as reeds, bitumen, and lead, so that the irrigation water would not seep through the terraces. Although no certain traces of the Hanging Gardens have been found, a German archaeologist, Robert Koldewey, did uncover an unusual series of foundation chambers and vaults in the northeastern corner of the palace at Babylon. A well in one of the vaults may have been used in conjunction with a chain pump, and thus was thought perhaps to be part of the substructure of the once towering Hanging Gardens. An old Akkadian inscription mentioning a renovation of the palace by a certain Nabonidus, possibly the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, has also been cited as evidence that the Hanging Gardens did indeed exist, at least in some form. However, the accuracy of this dating and the connection between the palace renovations and the Hanging Gardens are both uncertain. Similarly, although coins minted during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II bear the legend, King of the Four Corners, sometimes interpreted as referring to the four corners of the earth, other times as referring to the four quarters of his vast empire. There is no sure link between this title and the Hanging Gardens. Furthermore, while it is often claimed that the biblical account of the Tower of Babel, located in the region of Shinar, is a reference to the Hanging Gardens, scholars generally consider the biblical story to be a distinct literary creation. A more recent theory, first put forth in 1928 by the British archaeologist Leonard Woolley, who conducted excavations at Babylon from 1912 to 1914, held that the Hanging Gardens were built within the walls of the royal palace at Babylon, the capital of Babylonia, now in southern Iraq, and did not actually hang but were instead up in the air. That is, they were roof gardens laid out on a series of ziggurat terraces that were irrigated by pumps from the nearby Euphrates River. Water was drawn up from the river via a well and a pump in order to water the plants. According to Woolley, the idea that the Hanging Gardens hung from the palace walls was based on a misunderstanding of a passage from the writings of the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus. In the course of further excavations in the 1960s and 70s, however, no physical traces of the Hanging Gardens could be found. An unusual arrangement of rooms and vaulted chambers was discovered beneath the palace, and was thought by some to have served as the substructure for the gardens. However, more recent investigation has called into question whether the rooms in question were indeed contemporary with the Hanging Gardens, if they were even connected with the gardens at all. Moreover, as historian of science Paul J.A.D. Ward has pointed out, the absence of physical evidence for the Hanging Gardens can be readily explained. Even if the gardens did exist, they would have been constructed of perishable materials, such as wood, that would disintegrate over time. It is possible, too, that they were destroyed as a result of one of the many earthquakes that have shaken the region. Nevertheless, the traditional view that the Hanging Gardens were located in Babylon continued to find supporters into the 21st century. In 2013, for example, the American archaeologist Stephen Daly argued that a group of glazed brick rooms, located directly underneath the palace and identified by some earlier investigators as storerooms, could in fact be identified as the foundation chambers of the Hanging Gardens. Other theories about the location of the Hanging Gardens. Research in the late 20th and early 21st centuries suggested that popular theories, holding that the Hanging Gardens had once thrived in Babylon atop a rooftop or terrace ziggurat, were perhaps misconceptions. Scholars such as Ward and D.T. Pinckney, drawing on ancient texts describing the layout and topography of the gardens, argued that the description of the Hanging Gardens as lofty and tier upon tier is misleading. According to Ward, the actual layout of the gardens was more akin to a single sloping construct designed to imitate a natural mountain landscape. One later theory postulated that, owing to confusion among classical sources, the Hanging Gardens might well have been those constructed by Sennacherib, king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, at Nineveh, the capital of his empire. His palace was adorned with hanging gardens, which are mentioned in the Bible in the book of Jonah. No archaeological traces of the gardens have ever been found, but the description of the topography of the gardens in the Bible, in the book of Nahum, matches the description of the gardens attributed to Sennacherib at Nineveh. Sennacherib boasted of his gardening prowess in an inscription in which he declared, "I built an artificial mountain before the palace, its summit, its middle, and its lower parts, and I made it beautiful with a garden, embellished with all kinds of trees and shrubs, furnished with seats, and provided with a copious supply of water." The artificial mountain featured a complex system of irrigation, watered by a novel device for raising water, which may have been what would eventually be known as the Archimedes screw. It is not clear, however, whether Sennacherib's boastful claim that he built an artificial mountain should be taken literally. If it should be taken literally, then the gardens would have been on the ground and not suspended. If not, then it would seem that the author of the Book of Nahum confused the two. In either case, it seems likely that the biblical account was the source for the later classical accounts of the Hanging Gardens. Some scholars, including Ward, believe that the gardens were lost when Nineveh was sacked in 612 BCE by the Medes and Babylonians. Nineveh's destruction left a power vacuum that allowed Babylon to expand and grow, and it is possible that the Babylonians claimed the Hanging Gardens as their own. In 2015, A previously unnoticed architectural feature in the remains of Sennacherib's palace at Nineveh was brought to light. A team of archaeologists directed by Paul Collins of the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago discovered a series of niches built into the upper terrace of a stairway leading to the palace. The excavators noticed that the stairs were wider at the top than at the bottom, suggesting that they may have originally been supported by some sort of superstructure. Upon closer inspection, the researchers saw that several of the stair risers had been deliberately broken and removed, leaving behind only the vertical side of each step. According to Collins, the removal of the stair risers was so thorough that the excavators' mechanical teeth broke, rather than the bricks themselves. Further excavation revealed dozens of small clay bulli, that is, stamped seals, some of which bore the name of Sennacherib. Although the discovery of the staircase does not constitute conclusive evidence of the existence of the Hanging Gardens, as Collins himself has acknowledged, it lends credence to the idea that the gardens were situated at Nineveh. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.